You wake up and you're already exhausted. The body gets up, but the mind drags, chains. The day hasn't even started, and everything in you already weighs. The thought, the chest, even the silence. You look around, and everything seems normal. Work is waiting for you. Your phone vibrates with demands disguised as opportunities, and the world keeps telling you, come on, you can do it. But here's a truth that perhaps no one has told you. You are not just tired, you are sick. And the illness is not just in you, it's in the entire society. We live in an era where suffering no longer has a face. There are no bars, no bosses shouting, no direct repression. But there is something more cruel. There is the invisible imperative of performance. You have become your own oppressor. What was once an external order has turned into a constant whisper inside your head, and that whisper says, you need to do more, be more, produce more, don't stop, never stop. Byung-Chul Han calls this the society of performance, a system where you believe you are free, but in reality, you are more trapped than ever. Trapped by the idea that every second must be useful, every action must yield results, every breath must take you somewhere. And if you stop, if you fail, if you rest, then you believe you have no value. Positivity has turned into poison, freedom has turned into handcuffs, and the ability to do everything has become the condemnation of never being able to stop. Do you feel guilty when you're not producing? Anxious when you're not responding to messages? Frustrated when you don't meet your own goals, even when no one is demanding it? This is not just stress, this is not just fatigue, this is burnout. But not the kind of burnout that a weekend break can solve. It's existential burnout, the one that empties you inside while you pretend to be normal on the outside. And if all of this sounds familiar, it's not a coincidence. It's because you are inside the system, and the system wants you to believe that this is normal. But it's not. This video is a call not for you to produce more, but for you to wake up. Because maybe for the first time, someone is telling you, you are not weak, you are just trying to survive in a society that makes sick those who try to be strong all the time. Take a deep breath. We're going to talk about this, and you are not alone. For a long time, power used shouts. There were prisons, barracks, factories, asylums. There were clear orders. Sit down, be quiet, obey. Michel Foucault called this a disciplinary society. The logic was simple. Someone commanded, you obeyed. There was a you can't watching you, pruning you, shaping you. But this world, the one of visible prohibitions, is disappearing. What has taken its place is something much more sophisticated and much more cruel. Today, almost no one prohibits you from anything. No one tells you that you can't. On the contrary, they tell you that you can do anything, that you are free, that you have unlimited potential, that it's just a matter of effort, of focus, of discipline. And this message seems positive, motivating, but it carries a hidden trap. When everything depends only on you, any failure is also your fault. This is the essence of the performance society, the era we live in now. The prison has no walls, but it has goals. The punishment is not physical, it is psychological. And who demands from you is yourself. You have become an entrepreneur of yourself, as Byung-Chul Han says. And what's the problem with that? An entrepreneur can never stop. They can always improve. They can always grow. They can always do more. This puts you in an infinite race with no finish line, no rest, no truce. Have you noticed how even leisure has become a goal? Reading is good, but now it has to be productive reading. Meditation needs to be a performance technique. Exercise has become a mandatory task. Even sleep has turned into a battlefield. You monitor its quality, calculate the hours, optimize your nighttime routine. Resting is no longer resting. It's preparing to perform better tomorrow. You don't live, you manage yourself. And when you fail, when you can't cope, when you get sick, when you freeze, you blame yourself. Because after all, no one prohibited you from anything, right? You had freedom, you had choice, you just had to make an effort. But that's where the perversity lies. The new form of oppression is making you believe that you are oppressing yourself willingly. Control has changed form. It has left the figure of the boss and entered your head. You have become the guard of your own prison. The wall is now invisible, but it's there, built with expectations, metrics, productivity, and self-demand. And this wall is even harder to break because you no longer know where the system ends and where you begin. But if all of this is crushing you from within, it's because there is something deeply wrong with this model. Because it is not natural to live in war with yourself. And this silent war is leaving marks on your mind, on your body, on your soul. And that's what we will talk about next. Because this exhaustion that consumes you does not come from an external enemy. It comes from within, and it is fed by something that seems harmless, but is not. Excessive positivity. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. You learn to smile while falling apart inside, to say that everything is fine when you are actually on the brink of collapse, to maintain an image of control, efficiency, and enthusiasm, even when everything in you screams for a pause. And do you know why? Because we live immersed in a new kind of violence, a violence that does not hit, does not shout, does not impose. It seduces, it invites, it motivates. It is the violence of positivity. Han warns us, the 21st century is no longer dominated by diseases caused by repression. We no longer live in times of censorship, strict prohibitions, or forcefully imposed limits. What makes us sick today is not the you can't, it is the yes, you can. What corrodes from within is not classic oppression, but the excess of stimulation, the excess of apparent freedom, the excess of positive demand. The order now is to smile, to produce, to optimize, to be happy always. But this excess comes at a high cost. Depression, ADHD, anxiety, and burnout are no longer body and mind that can no longer bear the weight of continuous performance. And the most perverse thing is that in this new scenario, you stop being a victim to feel guilty. Couldn't be productive today. Laziness, feeling unmotivated, lack of focus, on the brink of collapse, lack of gratitude, lack of yoga, lack of a new course. The blame is always yours. This is how positivity makes you sick, because it does not accept limits. It does not accept failure. It does not accept sadness, pause, or slowness. And the more you try to align with this artificial ideal of happy productivity, the further you drift away from yourself. You become a motivational caricature while everything inside is collapsing. Positivity has become an imperative today. All the time you are bombarded with phrases like, believe in yourself, just want it, be your best self. It seems harmless, even inspiring, but the effect is different. You never feel enough. You never think you did enough. You never allow yourself to rest because there is always something to improve, correct, accelerate. You live surrounded by goals, metrics, comparisons, on social media, at work, even in leisure moments. And this bombardment of stimuli does not strengthen you. It exhausts you. It's like being trapped on a treadmill that never stops accelerating. And the worst part, you think you were the one who turned on the machine. But you weren't born this way. No one was born to live in this state of permanent alert. This model was constructed, and it is slowly emptying you. Because behind all this energy, this rush, this productivity, there is something that has been buried, something you forgot how to access. And that is what we are going to explore now. Because there is a part of you that is dying, suffocated, a part forgotten, ignored, discredited. And perhaps it is the only one capable of healing you. It is time to talk about silence, boredom, and everything you stopped allowing to be part of your life. Have you noticed how in recent years everything around you has turned into a kind of continuous improvement plan? You are no longer just a person. You have become a project, an investment, a personal brand, someone who needs to develop, sell themselves, reinvent. Not because you want to, but because if you don't do it, the world simply erases you, excludes you, calls you outdated, lazy, irrelevant. And here's the perversity. This pressure no longer comes from a boss, a government, a visible structure of power. It comes from within. You have become a product of yourself, and more than that, you have turned into your own executioner. Byung-Chul Han calls this self-exploitation. You no longer need a boss watching over you. You demand from yourself, control yourself, punish yourself. Productivity has become the new form of obedience. You think you are in control of your life because you have the freedom to choose, create, innovate, chase your dreams. But what no one told you is that this freedom is a farce, because all available paths lead to the same place: more work, more demands, more acceleration. And even what was sacred, what once served as shelter, has become an extension of your performance. The body has turned into a machine to be optimized, the mind a tool for managing goals. Relationships have become networking, spirituality has turned into coaching, rest has become a recharge to produce again. Even your free time is analyzed, monetized, maximized. You have become a company, and the only employee of that company is you. But no one can sustain this for long, and you are feeling it. The overload is not just physical, it is existential. You are present everywhere except within yourself. You are always functioning, but never really living. And deep down, you know, the more you try to fit into this ideal of success, the further you feel from your own essence. And here comes the question that few have the courage to ask. What have you lost in this process? What was left behind while you were chasing to be a better version of yourself every day? What was silenced? What was set aside? There is a part of you that may not even remember what it is like to exist without having to justify your existence. In the next part, we will talk about this forgotten space, about the silence you avoid, the boredom that scares you, and contemplation. This rare and almost extinct skill that perhaps is what you need to rediscover now. Because you were not born to be a cog. You were born to feel, to be, to simply exist. When was the last time you allowed yourself to simply do nothing? Not plan, not respond, not consume, not justify yourself. Just be, breathe, feel time pass without the sensation of wasting it. Perhaps you don't even know how to do that anymore, and it's not your fault. You have been trained to always be active, always available, always connected. Any moment of pause is quickly filled by a notification, a new task, a short video, a motivational content. I need to solve this first. Leisure has become waste, silence has become discomfort, and boredom has become an enemy to be exterminated. But let me tell you something that no one talks about. Deep boredom is not a flaw, it is a portal. Byung-Chul Han explains that in the past, boredom was the fertile ground for creation, reflection, and true presence. It was within it that philosophy, art, and spirituality were born. Because boredom, the kind that is not in a hurry, that bothers you, that makes you face yourself, opens space for contemplation. And contemplation is what brings you back to your humanity. Today, however, we live immersed in fragmented attention. We jump from stimulus to stimulus, like animals on high alert. Multitasking is no longer a skill, it is a survival instinct. You watch a video while responding to messages, while thinking about tomorrow's meeting, while feeling guilty for not doing more. The present has become unbearable, and this mental hyperactivity has a price. It robs you of your depth, your connection to the world, to people, to yourself. You get used to consuming everything on the surface, including your own emotions. You feel, but you don't dive deep. You reflect, but you don't deepen. You live, but you don't inhabit. That's why you are tired even after sleeping, anxious even in silence, disconnected even when surrounded by people. Because your soul has been trained to run, but has unlearned how to stop. And stopping is not weakness. Stopping is a reunion. It is in silence that you hear what the rush hides. It is in the pause that you realize how wounded you are. It is in the emptiness that you rediscover who you are without all those layers of productivity that have been placed upon you. But this return to being requires courage. Courage to slow down, to face the discomfort of having nothing to do, to endure the emptiness until it becomes fertile. And above all, courage to say no to the imperative of performance. And that's where we enter one of the most revolutionary points of Han's thought, a concept that may seem strange at first glance, but that perhaps contains the only real way out of this crisis we are living. The not being able as a form of freedom. In the next part, we will understand why stopping can be the most powerful act you can commit, and why perhaps the true rebel of our era is the one who has the courage to do nothing. If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in this channel, Mind Paradox. It breaks down Jung's core ideas and gives you tools to understand yourself more deeply. You have been trained to believe that freedom is the ability to do everything, that the more possibilities you have, the freer you will be, that the ideal life is one full of achievements, movement, and autonomous decisions. But what no one explained to you is that this excess of power, choice, and initiative is also a prison. And perhaps it is the most disguised and dangerous of all. The logic of our society is simple. If you are not doing something, you are wasting life. Everything must have a purpose, a utility, a result. Even rest needs to justify its existence as energy recovery. Even silence needs to be sold as strategic self-care. Everything needs to make sense. Everything needs to be profitable. Everything needs to generate something. But Byung-Chul Han presents us with a radical idea. True freedom begins when you reclaim the right not to do, not to act, not to want, not to be useful, to simply not be able to. This seems counterintuitive, doesn't it? After all, we spend our whole lives trying to achieve the power to do, the power to travel, the power to produce, the power to achieve, the power to decide. But the power to do has become an imperative. You can, so you must. And what if you don't want to? What if you can't? What if you are simply tired? The answer you hear from society is clear. You have failed. In this model, there is no space for vulnerability. There is no space for no. Everything that does not fit into this logic of action, achievement, growth is seen as deviation, weakness, laziness. But what if it is precisely in that space of refusal that true strength resides? Saying no is an act of power. Refusing excess, haste, overload is a gesture of resistance. Not wanting to improve all the time, not accepting every opportunity, not following all advice, not answering every call, saying no to the world in order to say yes to yourself. This not being able is revolutionary. It breaks the logic of infinite productivity. It shatters the myth of being the best. It returns to the human being what was taken from them, the ability to exist without having to constantly prove their worth. And when you allow yourself that no, something changes inside. Anxiety gives way to silence. Guilt yields to presence. The rush transforms into breathing. You no longer need to chase after yourself because you are already here, whole, now. But don't be fooled. This freedom is not comfortable because it requires confrontation. It requires you to look at the void and say, I accept not to be everything. I accept not to do everything. I accept to just be. And this goes against everything you have learned until today. That's why many become ill trying to free themselves without realizing they are just swapping one set of shackles for another. The true challenge is not to do more, it is to be able to stop, to be able to let go, to be able to say enough. But when you start to see the no as liberation, something is revealed. A clarity that was covered by noise, a strength that does not come from overcoming but from surrender, a peace that only appears when you refuse to keep fighting against yourself. And that is where we reach the deepest truth of all this one that you may have already felt, even without knowing how to name it. The burnout you are experiencing is not just tiredness, it is the symptom of a failed way of life. It is a cry for help from your soul. If you have made it this far, it's because something inside you is screaming. Perhaps silently, perhaps stifled, but it is screaming. Because you realize, even if vaguely, that something is very wrong with the way we are living. And I will tell you plainly, what you feel is not weakness, it is not incapacity, it is not a lack of mental strength. It is a natural response to a system that demands the impossible and labels as failure those who cannot deliver. You are not failing because you are tired. You are exhausted because you have been pushed into a life model that consumes every last drop of your emotional, psychological, and spiritual energy. a model that has turned each individual into a production machine, a showcase of performance, an avatar of success. And in this mad race for an unattainable ideal of achievement, what is lost is the most precious meaning. Byung-Chul Han is clear in saying that burnout is not an anomaly, it is not an exception. It is the most evident symptom of a collective existential crisis. It is not the collapse of a few too sensitive or too disorganized individuals. It is the collapse of an entire social logic based on self-exploitation, the cult of efficiency, and the disdain for silence, leisure, and inner life. You are not alone. This pain you carry, this fatigue that doesn't go away, this feeling of emptiness even when everything should be fine, is not your fault. It is a cry from your body and soul asking for a different rhythm, a different perspective, a different way of being in the world. And this way begins with a simple yet powerful choice: to refuse to continue living the way things are. Perhaps you still don't know how to get out of this. Perhaps everything I have said so far has touched you in some deep place, but you don't know what to do with that feeling. That's okay. The first step is not to act. The first step is to recognize, to feel, to allow yourself to look within, without filters, without defenses, without justifications. And if you identified with all of this, if this video spoke to something you didn't even know you needed to hear, I want to ask you one thing. Comment down below. Tell me how you're feeling. Tell me if this resonated with you. Because when we share, we recognize ourselves. And when we recognize ourselves, healing begins. Keep watching the next video. It is important, just as much as this one. Because transformation does not happen all at once. It happens in layers, in conversations, in reflections that accumulate until one day you wake up different, more whole, more aware, more free.